I want to give you guys my SEC over-under win total projections for this upcoming season. We're going to start off with Arkansas. Vegas has them at 4.5 wins. I got to take the under. They bring back Bobby Petrino to be their offensive coordinator, and I guess they're trying to bring back some of the nostalgia that they have from the early 2010s when Petrino was there and they were winning double-digit games. They had a lot of success with Ryan Mallett at QB, but those days are over. I believe that the game has passed Bobby Petrino by. The offense at Texas A&M wasn't that good, and I don't really expect Arkansas's offense to be that better. You got Trenton Green, who is DJ Uiagalelei, but way more athletic. You got concerns on the offensive line. You don't really have a lot of talent at wide receiver. Defensively, you got some talent there, but I don't know about your defensive coordinator. I see Arkansas being probably the worst team in the SEC this year. I got them at 3 wins, so I'm going to go with the under with 4.5 wins. Vanderbilt. Vegas has them with the win total of 3 this year. Give me the over. They do have a few games where they're playing scrubs and they should be able to win those games. And Vanderbilt has shown in the past that when they go up against inferior competition, they're able to take care of business. The problem is the SEC just treats them like a doormat. And the talent gap between them and the rest of this conference is so huge that it's hard for any head coach to have success at this program, especially when they prioritize academics over athletics. And what shows me how unserious Vandy is about football is how they had their team last year playing in a stadium that was under construction. But, for them to have a win total of 3 wins, it may seem like a lot, but with their schedule, they should at least be able to get the 4 wins. Mississippi State, their win total is 4 wins this year. I got to go with the push. I actually think that they will win 4 games this year. This is a team that has a new head coach, Jeff Lebby, who was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and they've mainly are relying on a bunch of transfers to perform well for them. You got the former Baylor QB and Blake Shapen. And if he ends up being decent, this could be a fun team to watch with how solid this offense can be. They do have some capable wide receivers. Don't know about the offensive line. And the defense, at least with the defensive line, they don't look too bad there. But they got a lot of transfers in there, and they pretty much are going the Colorado route, which is why I can't see them winning more than 4 games. But they got games on their schedule that are definitely winnable. So this is a push. Florida, 4.5 wins. Over, under. I'll go over. Florida may not be bowl eligible this year, but they definitely won't be one of those teams that ends up being a bottom dweller in the SEC. They do have a really good team. And my problem with Florida isn't talent. As a matter of fact, from a talent standpoint, I would rank them in the top half of the SEC, at least top 7 talent-wise. But the coaching is what frustrates me with the Gators. I don't trust Billy Napier, nor do I trust defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong. But they can get the 5 wins. Maybe they beat Miami week 1. Maybe they pull off another upset late in the season against Florida State. But, there aren't too many games that you can go through on Florida's schedule this year and say, yeah, they definitely are going to win those. A lot of them are either 50-50 or insanely one-sided. You got to go on the road to play Texas and Austin. You got no chance in hell at being able to win that game. Do you not know how hard it is to win on the road at Texas? Florida, I got them over 4.5 wins. I see this being a 5-win team, but man, at first I thought their win total was 3.5. It bumped up to 4, but they definitely can get the 5 wins. South Carolina, give me the over on 5.5 wins this year. As a matter of fact, this is a lock. This is one of these over-under bets that I love. South Carolina is going extremely under the radar. The main reason why 2023 was a nightmare for the Gamecocks was because by the time they got to week 2, week 3, nearly the majority of their starting offensive line was injured. And they had to start a lot of younger guys up front. The quarterback play was pretty good, but everything else around Spencer Rattler wasn't so great. But they've upgraded tremendously offensively. You bring in Rocket Sanders from the transfer portal. You got Nick Harbor, who is probably the freakish athlete in college football this year. You got Lenore Sellers stepping in at quarterback. He has a lot of upside, a lot of potential, and you return to experienced defense. And on paper, you're going to ask me, JT, where are the wins from South Carolina? And some of those wins are going to be upsets at home. But you can't tell me that South Carolina isn't capable of being able to beat some of the better teams that they have to play this year when Shane Beamer, remember the last couple of weeks of 2022 when they upset Tennessee, ruined their playoff hopes, and did the same to Clemson the week after? Shane Beamer is one of the best coaches at being able to win games where South Carolina is an underdog. So counting out Shane Beamer when he has shown the track record of being able to deliver upsets in the past, I'm not willing to do that. I believe that South Carolina is going to have a big bounce back season in a major way, and I have them winning 7 games this year. Auburn, I have them over 7.5 wins this year. Auburn's in a really tough spot because if they were in the ACC or the Big 12, I believe they would have been good enough to win those conferences potentially, or maybe finish in the top 3. They are a team that has a lot of young guys that they're relying on, but a good amount of experience on that squad this year. And Hugh Freeze showed a lot of promise in year 1, although things looked really ugly when they lost to that random team at home. I think it was New Mexico State. But one thing about Auburn is that they're one of those teams that anytime they play at home, you like their chances to pull off some upsets against big teams. It's just a weird aura around Jordan-Hare Stadium that for some reason they tend to be really lucky at times, and you can see a little bit of that luck happen this year. And even think about when they almost beat Georgia. If it wasn't for Brock Bowers, they would have lost that game. So Auburn, I definitely love them to win more than 7.5 games this year. I have them at 8 wins, as a matter of fact. Georgia, this win total is really large. 10.5 wins. You're telling me that Georgia is only going to have 1 loss this year, which any other year definitely seems realistic and it seems attainable. But they play 3 of their toughest games this season on the road against 3 of the SEC's top leading odds teams to win this conference, right behind them in Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas. If Georgia ends up losing only 1 of those games, they're going to win it all. But it doesn't matter if you believe Georgia is the most talented team in college football. Anytime you're going on the road against superior teams that aren't too far off from you talent-wise, especially Texas and Alabama, the gap isn't that big because they recruit on the same level as you. It's hard to see Georgia not losing at least 2 of those road games this year. I'm not saying it's going to be against Ole Miss or whatnot, but they're at least going to have 2 losses. So I got them under 10.5 wins. I don't see them being a 9-3 team. I don't think that's going to happen, but 10-2, I definitely see that being realistic for Georgia. Some people think that it's unrealistic, but I just can't see them going 11-1. Give me the under. Kentucky, over 6.5 wins. I love it. I love it. I love it. A lot of you folks are sleeping on the Wildcats this year. They got everything that you need to be a top team in the SEC this year. You're good up front on the offensive line and defensive line. You got a really athletic secondary. And offensively, at wide receiver, you got 2 of the better wideouts in the SEC that nobody knows about in Dane Key and Barry and Brown. And if Brock Vandagriff gives you good quarterback play this year, which I believe is going to happen, you could definitely find yourself being a lock to win at least 8 games this year and potentially more. Kentucky's one of those programs that every 3 years, they always have a season where they come out of nowhere and win 9, 10 games. This could be that year. LSU, they have a win total of 9. I just don't see it with the Tigers this year. I got to go with the under. I don't like Brian Kelly anymore as a head coach for some reason. You know, I was a really big fan of his when he was at Notre Dame, and he took the LSU job, and he overachieved year 1. But after that, the progress has kind of been stagnant, and I know that progress isn't always linear, but the more I watch LSU, the more I don't believe in Brian Kelly being able to deliver a natty there, and I think that they're heavily overrated. I got them under 9 wins. I see them 8 to 7, around that range of wins. The defense is still a huge question mark. I know you got a new DC, a new defensive staff, but you're still lacking the talent and depth on the interior and kind of in the secondary as well that you need to be able to sustain winning consistently in this conference. You're pretty much going to be what Ole Miss was last year. Every game's going to be a shootout. Your defense may slightly be better, but with some of the teams you're going to be facing, I just don't see you being a 9-win team. I think you're heavily overrated. Texas A&M, I got to go with under 8.5 wins. I don't have them winning less than 8. I actually have them at 8-4. The problem is that, you know, with 8.5, you throw that 0.5 in there, you got to win 9 games, which definitely is possible, but I do have concerns about the offensive line. There's some areas on defense that are not bad, but could be a little bit more better. And maybe this is an adjustment year for Mike Elko. I know the dude was winning at Duke, but it's not like he was doing what Kalen DeBoer was doing, leading Duke to the ACC championship and the college football playoffs, like what DeBoer did at Washington. But, you know, he did do more of less at Duke. But I could see this being a transitional year for Mike Elko down in College Station. And 2025 is the year I believe we really see A&M start to hit their stride year 2 under Mike Elko. But they're still going to be a decent team this year. They're one of the biggest wildcard teams in college football this year. If everything works out, they could win this conference. The talent is there, but, you know, there's a few positions where you got some concerns. Now, Missouri is projected to win 9.5 games this year. Listen, I'm without a doubt am taking the under. You see, the problem with Mizzou this year is that people are living off the recency bias with them. When every year there's a team that comes out of nowhere, they end up winning double-digit games, and they end up being college football Cinderella story. A few years back in 2019, Minnesota was that squad, and everybody thought that the Gophers under P.J. Fleck were going to be able to be the next big contenders in the Big Ten. And ever since that year, Minnesota has come nowhere close to eclipsing 9 wins. Missouri is going to come back down to earth this year. They lose a lot of their experience from last year on defense. They also lose their defensive coordinator to LSU. They do return nearly almost everybody on offense, but there were a few games that they won last year that if the ball would have bounced in a different direction, could have been losses, like when they nearly lost to Florida. And I don't see this being a consistent program yet under Eli Drinkwitz, when them being a 9 or 10-win team is always going to be sustainable on a consistent year-in and year-out basis. So I'm going with under 9.5 wins for Mizzou. Oklahoma, I love the over with 7.5 wins this year. This is one of the most disrespected teams in college football going into this year. Nobody is giving the Sooners a chance to win the SEC despite them having one of the best defenses coming into this year. You got a lot of talent in your skill position rooms. At wide receiver, you're loaded. Running back, Gavin Sawchuk, I love him a lot. And if Jackson Arnold plays up to his potential, this is a really dangerous team, and I could definitely see them playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in December for the SEC title. I know they got a few tough games, but some of those are at home. It's not easy to win in Norman. And we forget how good Brent Venables' defense was at times last year, especially at forcing turnovers. And with a lot of these guys being upperclassmen, along with guys that Brent Venables has recruited and developed, I love how good Oklahoma is all around. Over 7.5 wins. This is an absolute lock to me. It's going to happen. Ole Miss, I got to go under 9.5 wins. I got them at 9-3. I can't see this being a 10-win team again this year. They do have a really favorable schedule, and there's no team that has an easier path to the SEC championship than what Ole Miss does. But I can see them having a couple of losses to teams that they would be favored to beat right now. But overall, I still view this as a potential playoff team. I know that Lane Kiffin has been building that program up to a really good level where you believe that this is the year that Ole Miss can get over the hump, win this conference, get an automatic playoff bid. But I just don't see things playing out how most expect for the Rebels this year. I just think that, there's going to be a few bumps and bruises. Still a really great team, but not as good as what a lot of us think. Tennessee, I was surprised that their win total is only at 8.5 because I thought it was going to be 9.5 considering what they returned on offense. You got a deep and experienced group of wide receivers, which you got depleted with injuries at that position last year. Now you're fully healthy. You got a really good transfer from Tulane and Chris Brazil. You got Nico Imaviava stepping in at quarterback. He should be a huge upgrade from Joe Milton. He's Trevor Lawrence, but times 100 athletic ability. Defensively, you got a really good defensive line. As a matter of fact, one of the best in college football. Your secondary is your biggest question. But when you run the style of offense that you run with that high tempo, you're always going to put your defense at a disadvantage with the amount of plays that they're going to be on the field for. But I expect this offense to bounce back to the form that we saw them play at in 2022 under Hendon Hooker when he finished top 5 in Heisman voting. So over 8.5 wins for the Vols for me. Texas, 10.5 wins seems like a lot considering that this is their first year in the SEC. Are they ready for the elite level play that they're going to be up against every week? Yes, they are, because they've recruited at the top 5 level. And they are really well coached. They got a really good team. Quinn Ewers comes back at offense. You got Isaiah Bond, that wide receiver, out of the transfer portal. You got what should be one of the best offensive lines in college football. But your run defense definitely could go down a little bit. And with your win total being this high, you're saying that you're going to only be 11-1. And it's hard if Georgia ends up being 10-2 to see you being better than that, because just how oversaturated this conference is with great teams. And I got Texas making it to the SEC championship, by the way. I got their regular season record being 10-2. I just can't see them getting over 11 wins with how steep the competition is this year. And lastly, Alabama, give me the over at 9.5 wins. This is a lock to me. Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's been. If you can lead Washington to a national championship in only 2 years, you can do the same at Alabama, possibly more than that. You could win it all this year, because it's not like all the talent that Nick Saban recruited left Bama. They only lost a few key players like Caleb Downs, Caden Proctor, then he ended up coming back. You got Jalen Milroe, who's expected to be not only a Heisman finalist, but he's one of the most polarizing players in this sport this year. And Kalen DeBoer, his offense is a perfect fit for Jalen Milroe's skill set because he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the nation. And Kalen DeBoer, what made his offense so fun to watch at Washington last year was how efficient Michael Penix was with Rome Odunze and those other wide receivers at completing throws outside of the numbers, 30, 40 yards plus downfield. So that's why I love Alabama to be over 9.5 wins. I got them being the only team in the SEC this year with one loss. I got them winning this conference. And a lot of people in the South don't know just how good of a coach Kalen DeBoer truly is. But after this season, the whole world is about to be woken up to just how much of a prodigy Kalen DeBoer is as a head coach. So these are my 2024 SEC over-under win total projections. Leave yours down in the comment section down below. Comment your thoughts. I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say.